I think it's easy to convince the patient that are disagreeing with you that they need to go somewhere else.
If they love you, figure out what it is they love about you. I always just, when I'm establishing rapport with patients, I always just try to figure out from their interests something that I'm also interested in.
Join Doctors Savanah Craig and Ronnetta Sartor as we navigate life beyond graduation. Real conversations about forging our own paths in our early years in our careers. There's a reason it's called practicing dentistry. Welcome back to another episode of Beyond Graduation. I am Savanah Craig, and with me as always,
I am Ronnetta Sartor.
Awesome. This week, we wanted to highlight some of the pivotal metrics and ideas surrounding building our self-determined future. At Ignite, we whittled it down to focusing on your people, your processes, and your systems to help build all of your different controls. So the controls for your team members, your patients, those are your people, your processes, and your systems. And then we've touched on financial control on one of our other episodes, but all of these things are ways that we can grow and measure how we are able to build our practices, our brands, our lives to be what we want them to be. So that was a long intro. Ronnetta, you have had a front row seat to this idea at Ignite, not just on the core team like me, but also through Ignite coaching. So give the people a little idea, deep dive on what these different areas look like and how it's changing your practice.
Sure, it's so many different ways that it's changed my practice and just my personal and professional journey, and it applies to, like I said, personal and professional. So building your self-determined future, you have to have the right people in your life. So you just think about your life in general. There are people in your life that are energy givers, and there are people in your life, hopefully they don't take up a good part of your life, but that drain you of your energy. And in offices, I know that we all have likely experienced having both type of coworkers, even if it's not in a dental practice. You've experienced someone that you're like, oh Lord, I don't feel like hearing their story today, or I don't want to deal with that today. But I think to take it a step further in our office, you definitely want to make sure you have the right people on your team. But in addition to that, you want to make sure that you are attracting the right patients. Or if there is a patient who, drains you and everyone in the office of your energy, you have to ask yourself, am I best suited to provide the care for this patient? Or would they be better served going someplace else? Because obviously there might be some disconnect. And how do we get around that?
That's
what
a
were
tough
your
one.
thoughts? Yeah, it's a tough one.
That's such a tough one. I think it's easy to convince the patients that are disagreeing with you that they need to go somewhere else. But sometimes there are patients that drain you and are difficult, but they love you. And I don't know how to get rid of those.
Well, those patients, you just find common ground. Just that's what I do, at least.
Tell me more about that.
If they love you, figure out what it is they love about you. I always just, when I'm establishing rapport with patients, I always just try to figure out from their interests something that I'm also interested in.
Okay.
And then most of our discussions revolve around that, as it doesn't pertain to dentistry.
Gotcha. So you control that situation so that it's not so draining.
Right. And then if I see that it's going a different way, I try to steer it back to the things that we have a common goal on. One being dentistry and the other being whatever it is outside of dentistry both of us like. That's been my strategy.
Easier said than done sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
So the way that we think about all of these parts of getting to your self-determined future at Ignite is looking at all of this like a Venn diagram, and how your getting your people and your processes on the same page involves having systems and control over those systems. Getting your processes and your production at their best can helps you get financial control. Getting your people and your production on the same page gives you clinical control, and all of those different controls get to self-determined future. But you and I have been focusing a lot on these systems controls and getting our people and our processes situated, or on the road to being situated.
Mm-hmm.
What has that looked like with Ignite coaching, and are you seeing benefits of getting those things coordinated a little bit better?
For sure. So, when it was a different time that the office that I purchased, the previous owner, it was a different time that he lived in, right?
Yeah.
So systems and that sort of stuff, it was kind of all in everyone's brain, but it wasn't physically written down anywhere.
Yes.
So it provided me with the opportunity when I came in to create systems that I wanted, or based on where I saw the office going, but also systems that were needed so that it took less time of when things happen trying to diffuse situations and figure it out, to more so, okay, as a team we need a system. Okay.
So I think a lot of people, myself included, feel like there can be pushback from team when you start to create these systems, or the investment in the beginning of your time and efforts to create them could seemingly not be worth it, because is anyone even going to follow this? Is anyone going to write it down? Have you seen the buy-in, and is your team realizing that doing and creating these true systems instead of coming at every new problem, with no playing field,
Mm-hmm.
has your team bought into this idea, I guess?
So I think, like you said, there are certain systems and processes that are a lot easier to, be okay with
Implement.
and implement. But for the ones that there are some pushback on, we have meetings and we talk about it. Um, because there may be some viewpoints that I didn't consider as well as them. So it's good that when we have our team meetings that maybe it's on the agenda.
Can you give an example of maybe one of those systems that really received a little more
Sure.
hesitation?
So one of the systems was like no shows and
Okay.
cancellations. And
Yeah.
so um we had one front desk person, because they're constantly on the phone and get the calls and everything. Their standpoint was, okay, we should charge them because I think this person's just canceling just because they know that they can and they could easily get in another appointment. But then it was some, different situations for different people where there were people on the team that felt like, okay, I think that people should at least get the benefit of the doubt at least
Sure.
once.
Okay.
Um, but it led to us hearing each other out to know what all of the different aspects of the situation were, and together formulating a system to where now, you get one chance. But we also started tracking it too. It led to that, because how do I know when I answer the phone, because my front desk team is busy or an assistant's answering the phone, how do I know that that person didn't cancel
Right.
before
Right.
and canceled last minute? So we had to start tracking, so that's not just holding the patient accountable, we had to start holding ourselves accountable.
Okay.
Because if they're late or cancel or no show and it's no note in there and it's their third time doing it, well, they get the opportunity to do it again because we didn't do what we're supposed to do to
Yeah.
make sure that it was documented.
Yeah.
But then from there, it led to bigger conversations, because it's like, how are we holding the patient accountable if we're not even putting a note in to say that
Right.
they did that,
Right.
or put a note in to say that we called to confirm the appointment. They said they'll come, you know. So that was one of the biggest ones. And sometimes it's not something that you create a system on, and that one meeting. I will say that one took several different meetings, and us, at one point we tested out things like charging a no call, no show fee. But how do you do that for new patients, right? They have no loyalty to you because they haven't met you yet,
Right. And you don't have any financial information to, yeah.
Right. So it's more so creating systems. So, you could have those patients pay to reserve the appointment. And if they don't show, then they lose the money. Or you could have a card on file for those patients. And those are one of the things I think when you, as a team, on those bigger hot topic issues, come together to develop what your system and process is for it, you have more buy-in.
Absolutely. That's so interesting. That's such a big one. I don't know. For me personally, it fires me up when there's no shows. But I also understand the business team. They're taking the brunt of that phone call or potential argument from the patient in some aspects. So I think their thoughts on that need to be taken into consideration. So that's cool that you guys all sat down and figured that out. What have you, if you don't mind sharing, what have you decided is the no show policy
So the no show policy.
or broken appointment, whatever you want to call it?
So we definitely make sure that we're tracking it.
Yeah.
And the reason, or if there wasn't a reason.
Yeah.
And you get, if someone's sick, that's understandable.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Or if, it's something that's catastrophic and they can't make it, that's understandable.
This is the hardest part about all of these systems is, and then there's gray area.
Right.
Here's our policy, but also we're all human.
Right.
And that gets really hard.
So you get 2 shots pretty much. Okay. And the third time, pretty much you have the opportunity to either pay for your treatment in full at the time that you schedule.
Okay.
Or you can call us on a day that you're available, and if
Same
we
day.
have availability, then we'll see you.
Yeah.
But for new patients, pretty much we ultimately decided that in order to book that appointment, you have to pay a reservation fee. And then if you show, fine, it just goes towards whatever treatment you have. If you do not, then pretty much you lose the money.
I love that. That's hard. That's hard. A hard line to keep, but I love that.
Mm-hmm.
And I would imagine it's made all of your lives easier.
It has. I think part of it is what you'll realize is the same way in any other type of relationship. You teach people how to treat you, and you teach people what your expectations are.
Yeah.
But it goes both ways, right? So if we're expecting those things from our patients, we have to be held accountable too.
Mm-hmm.
And hold up our end of the deal.
We've had this conversation a lot with the no-show stuff because I think it impacts so much of the business. But I don't know, when I go get my hair cut, if I don't show up to my hair appointment, I'm getting charged full fee.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm not welcome to book there anymore because I wasted their time. And obviously life happens. But I think we were talking just this past week about how for some reason we've allowed dentistry to be this weird in-between gray area where for some reason as a society we don't understand the expectations put on us as a patient, but we can like get it with our like haircuts or like your nail appointments. Like those people aren't messing around, but for some reason we don't do it in dentistry. Ooh.
So my theory is anything in the cosmetic realm, especially us ladies with getting our hair done, right?
Mm-hmm.
We find so much value in having that done because we want to look good, right?
Sure. Sure.
And a lot of times with dentistry, we're in a profession where people already don't want to come see us. So they really don't need much of a reason to not show.
Absolutely.
Versus you're going to think twice about not going to get your hair done because you have to look in the mirror and other people have to look at you.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a tooth in the back, who knows it but you?
Right.
If you're a patient.
That's honestly not a bad theory. Frustrating, but you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
And so I think the last realm of it that we were talking about is, the controls in terms of like production and, transitioning from one tooth dentistry to comprehensive and complete care dentistry. And I know for a lot of dentists that can be hard because in school, you know, we work on number 19 crown prep
For 4
pre-clinically.
hours.
Right. For 4 hours. And now, in the real world, you have to take into consideration what's going on around number 19, but in addition to what's going on around it, the patient as a whole, the
Mm-hmm.
patient's other medical um ailments or health concerns that could be contributing to the dentistry.
The other part of that for me, and I don't know how you guys were taught, but we had this like, and to some extent you still treatment plan this way where it's like emergent, teeth in pain, that sort of thing. But like we would have to do all caries through the whole mouth. So like fillings everywhere, even if you knew number 19 was going to get a crown, all of the fillings had to be done. So you'd have to do your MOD, and that was basically your buildup, but we didn't think of it that way. And then you would get all of the cavities taken care of, all of the perio, and then you would get signed off on to be able to move forward with like fixed or removable.
Mm-hmm.
And then you would take your beautiful MOD BL that took you 70 years to make out of composite and you'd spin it down for a crown, and none of it mattered anyway. But it took me forever to like get out of that mentality of like, if 19 needs a crown and 18 and 20 have cavities and we need to do fillings, like I can actually do all of that together.
Mm-hmm.
Because the patient's already numb over there together. Like,
Right. And
and so,
patients appreciate it because
right?
they get to get their treatment done in, more efficient and less appointments.
Yeah, and less times getting poked by my needle.
So it's a win-win, patient has to see you less. They're getting a treatment done that they need to get done. It's helping with your production, and all of those goals.
And the biggest thing, from a business perspective that I had never thought about till, do you remember the cotton roll project in residency?
Oh, yes. You'll have to tell them about that project.
Yes. So to get an idea of overhead and running a business, it was super informative. Basically, we were all assigned a different set of procedures, and we needed to calculate how much supplies we needed, how much it cost to keep the lights on in your practice, and how much your team needed to be paid, and then how much you needed to produce and collect on that procedure to keep your business going, basically. And you realize that your chair covers and your gloves and your bibs all have a cost associated with them. And so if you can keep one patient in your chair and do more dentistry, you're actually going to save on your overhead rather than one appointment to do number 19, one appointment to do 18. Not that anyone's still doing that, but that's what we did in dental school. And so not only is it better for the patients, it's also better for your business's bottom line.
And then I think to kind of take it one step further, looking at their health history and other comorbidities, and relating that to what's going on in their mouth. I've had so many patients tell me, I've gotten cavities in my mouth all the time, and no dentist has ever sit down and talked to me about how these other things that I have going on is impacting my ability to keep my mouth cavity free.
Yeah.
And I think, just taking the time to take it a step back and look at big picture, and not so much focusing on that one tooth, that helps bring so much more to the table for your patients and help build value in what they're receiving from you.
Shocker, it's all connected, right?
Yeah, who would have thought?
Yeah, so there's a lot to it every day, but I do think getting things on paper, getting everybody on the same page as much as you can,
Mm-hmm.
even though it's an investment up front, I do think it just makes things run a lot easier. It makes me hopeful hearing that you've had so much success, because I've been writing all of these operating procedures and I am just praying people use them because that would be sad.
Yeah, I think it's worth definitely going through, like having the team all read through them. What I do is have everyone read through them, and then they have their own copy.
Yeah.
Mark it up.
Yeah.
Tell me what you love and don't love and what needs to be edited, and then we talk about it.
I like that.
So if it's something that needs to stay, you get the opportunity to let them know why, the importance of it staying.
Yeah.
But it might mean that the way it's written needs clarification.
Yeah.
Because it could be that we meant one thing, but how it's being received as it's written isn't what the intention was,
Absolutely. I'm writing this down. Right, because at the end of the day, I'm not creating a book of rules.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to make everybody's lives easier.
It can feel that way, though, if your team doesn't have input.
Right.
Imagine coming to work and then, like, someone just hands you a book and, like, yeah, read this. This is what we're doing moving forward.
Right.
I would have some feelings, too.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I think that's really good, because giving people time on their own to digest it is also really important, so that it's not such a pressurized situation.
Yeah, your team, and it might be that maybe you only give them a section of it and you guys do that first.
Yeah.
Rather than giving the whole shebang.
I love that. Look, I'm ideas for me, ideas for you.
Yeah, we're learning so much over here. So speaking of learning, to our listeners out there, if you all have any tips or tricks for, systems, processes, production, definitely let us know. We'd love to hear so much about it. And you can find me on Instagram at Dr_Sartor.
And me at Savanah Craig DDS. Thanks again. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Beyond Graduation. If you enjoyed this week's episode, be sure to share it with a friend. Connect with us on social media at Savanah Craig DDS and at Dr_Sartor. And remember, you are not alone on this journey.
Thank you for listening to Beyond Graduation, brought to you by IgniteDDS and Future Dentists. This episode was sponsored by IgniteDDS Coaching. We build self-determined futures. For more information, please reach out to the IgniteDDS team.